Hi, Chase Oaks. I've missed you. I love you. It's so good to be here. I want to welcome all of you at Legacy. You look beautiful today. And I want to say to everybody at Sloan Creek and 544, I hope you're wonderful. And I hope that you're loving it over there. Those campuses are amazing. And anybody that's online or wherever you're joining us from all over the world, thanks for being a part of everything that's happening here at Chase Oaks. We're in a series right now where we're talking about how God works wonders in the middle of our mess. And we really, I don't know if you've been a part of it or you listened at all. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to go back, especially last week. I thought Jeff really kind of opened my eyes for the first time to really understand how big of a mess we have on us. I did not know. He called it the largest humanitarian crisis in our lifetime. And I was just like, what? I didn't realize that that's what we're looking at when we talk about how many displaced people there are and how many refugees there are in the world. And my wife and I were just like, wow. So we, like many of you, probably dug deep. We're like we're going to give to this. I want to be a part of a collective movement of people that really are trying to work wonders alongside of God to do an amazing thing in the midst of this massive mess. So I'd encourage you to be a part of that. You can go online and you can give to the Global Fund if you'd like to be a part of it. But man, it was just amazing to see how Jeff kind of really helped us understand what we're looking at. So we are in a series right now, and it's called Beautiful Mess. And so I want to start by doing this, okay? I want you to turn to the person beside you, and I want you to say, you're beautiful, but you're also a hot mess. Go ahead and say that. You are a hot mess. Oh, man, that's good. I don't know about 544 and Sloan Creek, but here at the Legacy campus, some people said that a little too passionately. Like, simmer down. Be nice. We're at church. So, man, it's true. You are beautiful. You're made in the image of God, and you bear the image of our Creator. So you're beautiful people, but we are also very gifted at sort of making a mess of our lives in the midst of this beauty. I'm going to tell you a story to start. I actually went to Colorado all the time. I was actually born in Colorado, love Colorado. It's so beautiful there, but I'm going to tell you a story about where I made a mess in the midst of beauty. I was with my kids, and we decided that we were going to go to our favorite place in Colorado. It's called Lake Dillon, and it's actually this beautiful lake that sits outside of Breckenridge in Frisco. And I actually baptized my daughter there in that lake, which was an amazing experience, but you're not supposed to get in the water, so that was illegal. So I'm not sure if it counted, but hopefully she'll be all right. Anyways, we love going there. I ride my bike all the time there and just love being there. So we decided one time, we used to camp there a lot, and we're gonna teach our kids how to fish, okay? So we are like, get all the license and buy the fishing poles and, get the worms. And, we're all ready. We go on the hike, go to the lake. And so here's a picture of us at the lake. And this is like the first time they've ever experienced it. So this is Mariah. And Mariah, for the first time, is like, oh, Dad, look, there were worms and they're alive. And she's never pulled them out. And then she cried when we put them in the hook, And so we were getting ready to do all this. And so super excited, so beautiful. And so I'm like, okay, girls, here's how you cast. And I'm showing them how to push the button and, release when you let go. And I'm showing them how to put it out there. And so I hand the rod to my daughter, Mariah. And she's sort of an awkward, like she's beautiful. She sings and she's a phenomenal girl. But when it comes to like using her hands, she's not real good at that, especially when she was little. And so she's like, bloop, and like falling in, like, no, honey, go over your head. She's like, bloop, no. And so we do this. It's a long time. And finally, my wife, she grew up fishing. And so she's like, just give me the rod. She like had something to prove. So she like grabs the rod from me and she's like, here's how you do it, honey. And she's going to send that thing across the lake. She's just like, with all of her might, she's like, like this, right? Well, right about that time, my sweet daughter Mariah just walks right behind her mama. And my wife sinks that hook square in my daughter's forehead. And so I did what every good father should do, and I kneeled down, I brought her to me, and I hugged her, and I said, I am so sorry your mother did this to you. But then Then I'm like, and I need you to stand still because I want to take a picture. So I take a picture of her. And then, being a good father, I said, now turn to the side, please. And so she turned to the side and take another picture. And yeah, that's what she was at. So I'm like, oh, it's just awful. And so we're looking at each other and we're like, well, fishing trip's over. So I call my doctor, and I'm literally walking back to the campground. We're on this little trail beside the lake, and I'm walking back to the campground. I'm like, yeah, doc, I'm gonna tell you what my wife did. She sunk this fishing, hook in. I said, what do I do? And he says, well, don't pull it out because it'll grab that barb and you'll rip her forehead. Worse. I'm like, oh, so then what do I do? He said, you got to pop it through all the way past the barb. And I was like, did you say that again? Did you say pop it through? And so we get back to the campground, and I lay her down on my truck bed. I grab the pliers, and I grab that thing. I'm like, honey, just stay still. And my wife is crying. She's a mess, as she should be. I'm such a jerk. And so then I like pop that thing through, like pops through, and then I take the clippers, I cut the barb off, and I pull it back out. And then I took some iodine, and I made a little heart on her forehead like this right here. And she had 2 little holes right there in her forehead, which you can't see at all now. She's fine. But in that moment, I'm telling you, this was real. So, see, today, I really want to talk about shame and how shame creates such a mess. And in that moment for my wife, she was really just like, I can't believe I did this. Like, she really was like crying and sad. And like, I did this to her. Our fishing trip's over. I'm so sorry. I would never do this to my own daughter. And I was just like, yeah, but you shouldn't have ever tried to teach her. No, I didn't say that. I'm just kidding. But I wanted to. So anyways, we've all experienced and felt the ramifications of shame in our life. In some way or another, we've done something that we wish so bad we hadn't done, and we just kind of walk in it, and we've all felt that. So I want to kind of go all the way back and give a biblical perspective of what shame really is. I think it's an epidemic, and it's a really big problem I think we really need to talk about, because we don't only put shame on ourselves, but we put shame on other people, right? And we actually publicly label, and we do things to our children even, and coaches and teachers. We've all experienced what it's like to be shamed by people, but also to give shame. So we're all sort of have seen it and felt it. And so now I think we should look at it for what it really is. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning of the story of God in Genesis chapter 3. It started in the garden. And in the garden, Adam and Eve were figuratively and literally naked and unashamed. And they were walking with God. And then the slimy little snake serpent comes up to Eve and says, you should take a bite of the apple. And this apple was on the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And he said, if you'll be like God, if you'll eat this apple, and you'll have the understanding of what evil really is. And so she does it. She takes a bite, and then she talks Adam into doing the same thing. And it's interesting, the very first feeling that they ever felt was shame. And what did they do? Immediately, they wanted to hide. They wanted to hide, and they wanted to cover up. They wanted to cover up themselves. Immediately, that's what shame did to them. It's what it does to us. And so that was the very first time they had ever felt that. They were pure and whole. They had never felt anything wrong or done anything wrong up to this point. And now, because they did the one thing that God asked them not to do, they immediately have these feelings that we've never felt that, by the way. Ever since the fall, since that happened, the world has been led by the enemy of darkness, who is the prince of this earth. And he has one goal and objective, and that's to do what? To accuse us. He's the accuser of the brethren day and night. And so it's interesting. The first thing they felt was being shamed, and then they wanted to hide themselves, right? And then the next thing they did was they started to accuse. Like, well, it was Eve's fault. It was Adam's fault. It was the serpent's fault. They all started pointing fingers. And so accusations started flying. That's immediately what we want to do. We want to cover up, we want to hide it, and then we accuse people to place blame on other people. Are you guys tracking with me? Okay, so this is where we're at, and that's when they went from innocent and pure to guilty and ashamed. But the enemy, he's crafty, man. He's slick, and he is a liar. Lying is his native tongue. That's what he's extremely good at. And that actually is his game. He can't ever say, there's no shame in my game. No, that's the only game he's got. That's what the enemy does. And if you're familiar all with the teaching and thoughts about shame, and you've studied it just a little bit, then you probably are aware of some of the writings and the talks that Brene Brown has given. She's an amazing author and a great storyteller, and she's done some TED Talks that have millions of views that really shaped a lot of my thinking in shame and understanding vulnerability especially. And so a lot of my thoughts came from her. And one of the things she says is that shame is a marshland of our soul. It's a place that we have to go to. We don't want to go there. Nobody wants the drudgery of talking through the shame in our lives. But when we do the work of healing and vulnerability and trying to realize what it's done to our lives, that's like the most freeing work that we can do. It's the most cleansing work. And so one of the things that she really helped me understand is the difference between guilt and shame, okay? So guilt says, I'm bad because of what I've done. Guilt is about our behavior. It's what you've done. While shame says, I'm bad because of who I am. See the difference? Shame is about your identity. So guilt has to do with behavior stuff, while shame, you take on the identity of your behavior. Let me explain a story to help you understand that. So my daughter, Montana, is learning how to drive, and she's got her permit. And so right now, my prayer life is really good. And I actually trying to teach her all the time, and she always wants, every time we get in the car, Dad, can I drive? Right, so this is what I hear all the time at my house right now. And so she has this thing where she gets in the car and she puts it from park all the way down past the drive, and then she goes down to 2 and 3. And she never hits drive. She always goes past, and then she goes back up. I'm like, baby, can you just slow down? Don't be, worried. You just put it on drive and you don't have to go past. So I'm just trying to teach her not to do that. And she's like, Dad, I don't do that. I go, yeah, you do. I'm trying to show her, you always do that every time you get in the car. And we're driving when we're having this conversation. I was like, baby, you just did that a little bit ago. You don't have to do that. She's going about 20 miles an hour. She goes, no, I don't. And watch. And she just puts it in park while we're going 20 miles an hour. I didn't think this was a conversation I had to have. Honey, don't put it in park while you're driving. And so that's what she did. Luckily, the transmission didn't fall out, right? But there was a lot of noises I didn't like very much. Then my transmission was right, all this. So anyways, I'm like, baby, I kind of lose my mind. No, don't do that. So she puts it back really fast. And then she says this, we get back to the house, we're talking about, you did that, it's okay, it was no big deal, it was just an accident, and now you'll never do that again. And she was like, Dad, you can never tell anybody about this. Ever. Especially Madison and Mariah, our oldest sisters. And so several weeks went by, and I was like, you still don't want to talk about that with anybody? You've never told anyone? She's like, no, I don't want anyone to know. What about 5,000 people? Is that cool? No. And she's like, no, Dad, I'm serious. And I'm like, I think we need to talk about that. Why don't you want to talk about it? And she says, because if people find out, they'll know how stupid I am. I went, oh. Okay, now we're talking. That's real, and you really believe that. And I said, do you really feel like you're stupid? And she said, Dad, my biggest fear is that when I take the ACT, I'm going to do awful, and everyone's going to know how dumb I am. I'm like, oh, so you really do. Do you see the difference? Guilt is something bad she did. Shame is taking on the identity. She feels dumb. And so we're like, well, you know what? We're going to talk about that. And so I'm like, let me just tell you all the reasons why I think you're absolutely brilliant. And I just said, the things I see in her, and I started speaking life over her, and the thing that she's trying to believe, you're stupid. I was like, nope, we're not going to take that on you. And dumb, nope, that's not you. And so just tears and, hugs after that. And God restored her identity in that moment. And so after that, she's like telling her friends. And I'm like, are you ready to tell your sisters? She's like, yeah, I want to tell my sisters. She tells her sisters, and they laugh, and we all just think it's funny. But then, I was like, but she ain't dumb, and don't ever think that about my daughter. And then I was like, can I tell this story? And she was like, if it'll help people be freed from the shame that I had, then yes. I was like, come on, girl, you preach. So, yeah, that's a good story, yeah. So I need you to hear this. God's plan was never for us to take on the identity of our brokenness. When we sinned in the garden and did what we did, he hasn't ever come back. No scripture ever says, you remember when you ate the apple, right? Like, he doesn't hold that over. He doesn't beat us up. We do that to ourselves. We're the ones that normally are our worst critic, and we shame ourselves. And then when we see sin in other people, we shame them as well. And we're really good at that. We are great at making a mess of that. But I need you to hear, God didn't want that to be our identity. In other words, just because you did something wrong doesn't mean that that's who you are. And just because you made a mistake, you are not your sin. I need you to hear that, write that down, and just tell your friends, you are not your sin. And that is the greatest battle that we have on planet Earth, is to help constantly get rid of the shame that's on us. But the enemy, he's so good at making you go, no, you're bad. You know it. You know what you've done, right? And he fights to destroy our identity. He wants us to forget that when we accept Christ and accept the blood that he did on the cross, the atoning sacrifice that once and for all annihilated all shame, that when we accept that onto us, he makes us brand new, he washes us, he makes us clean, he restores us, and he redeems us, and we take on the identity of our Savior Jesus, right? So Satan wants us to forget that. Like, no, don't remember that. He wants us to wallow in our guilt. He wants us to never forget what we've done, and he holds it over us, and he tries to constantly point to that thing that happened and tell us that that's who you are. So when I say the word shame or ashamed, there's probably a moment that you go to. There's probably a time that you did something bad that you don't want people to know about. And if people knew, you'd feel completely exposed, and you'd be like horrified that people found out about that thing, right? So I know a little bit about this. I understand what it feels to feel public sort of shame and public labels that we put on people. So you think of Jeffrey Dahmer, you think that that's the one thing that he's known for, even though he probably did good things in his life. Nobody will ever know that. I say the name that, and you think of what he did, and we place that on him, and that's who he is, right, forever. And I have felt that. When I started in ministry, went to Bible college and saw hundreds of people baptized, was doing amazing work for God. But man, I was a youth pastor in Colorado, and there was something that happened that I'm forever known for. And here's why. If you publicly speak at all, you communicate, the biggest nightmare is that you're going to say the wrong thing and something bad slips out, right? Well, I'm actually known for that. It's true. And I've never shared this with you, and today I'm revealing this. Even though it happened 12 years ago, it's something that is embarrassing for me, but it's really funny. And so I was in Colorado teaching my students about how bad company corrupts good character, and the friends you choose or who you're going to be like, and if you're around evil, it'll affect you. And I was talking about Abraham and Lot, and how Lot was too close to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And it says in the Bible that he pitched his tent too close to Sodom and Gomorrah. And so when I said that, I got my words mixed up. And I moved the in, and I was trying to say pitch his tent, and I'm embarrassed by this, but I said pinch his tit instead. I'm glad you think that's so funny. Again, I'm getting laughed at, I'm telling you. And so that night, the video guy sends it to a few of his friends. This is before YouTube, and that video went viral before viral was viral. And he sent it to some missionary friends of his missionaries sent it to these other. I got a call on Monday the next day from Italy saying, hey, I saw your video. Like, what? You saw, huh? And then it just went berserk. Like, it was on the front page of AOL. Do you remember AOL? It was on radio shows all over the country. I had a TV show come and do a story on us, MSNBC, caught on camera. That show did something to me. And if you Google, and you're all going to Google this, if you Google dirty preacher, you find this guy. So I understand public labels. In fact, when I go to Christian conferences, I'm not joking. People walk and be like, dude, you're the pitcher's tent guy. Like, yeah, thank you. You want to take a picture? And so we do pictures. It's just awful. And so, but it's also really, really funny. It's a funny clip. When you see it, you're going to laugh your face off and you're going to tell your friends, that's my pastor. Come to my church. It's crazy. And so here's the thing, though. Like, I decided a long time ago, you didn't have to laugh about this, right? And I have to just own it, that it's a mistake that I made. And I'm known for my mistake publicly. Or I'm just going to suck my thumb or smoke crack the rest of my life. Like, that's my two options. And so I've chosen to just laugh about it and be really honest, I blew it. And because I'm known for my mess, it's kept me really humble, and it's also kept me really vulnerable. And I realized something about vulnerability. Vulnerability, you perceive it as weakness, like I'm not going to share that. They can't know that. But when you actually speak about your weakness and the things that you've messed up about, it's actually the greatest courage that you could probably have. It's actually strength. And when I share my vulnerability, the fear is once they know, they're going to run. They're going to get far away from me. But the truth is, when I share my vulnerability, it's like people are drawn to that because like, oh, I feel the same way. Me too. And we do this thing where we connect because you're broken, I'm broken. Okay, it's okay. We're all right. And our vulnerability actually connects us because the ultimate fear is disconnection. The fear of being unlovable and unworthy. And if people knew, they'd run. So here's the two lies that the enemy wants us to think about. This is so big to talk about this. It's so important. And the enemy just hounds us with this all the time. He wants you to think, I don't have what it takes, and I'm not good enough. And that's what he says to you. You don't have what it takes. You're not good enough. He'll say it over and over. And then we internalize it and believe it. Say, I don't have what it takes, and I'm not good enough. This is where he camps out. And the best biblical account that I know to speak of this feeling that we have in the Bible is one of the most beautiful stories that's ever been written. It's found in Luke 15. And some people call it the very best story of all time because it's so concise, it's so packed. There's 540 words. And this parable, Jesus brilliantly explains the very heart of God. In fact, I think of it as like he's in heaven and he's being worshiped by the angels. And he's like, I've got to go down there and help them understand the heart of the Father. And so he goes to come and tell this story. Now, here's the context. The story is called the Prodigal Son. And the context is this. I kind of imagine in my head Jesus being at a bar. And he's hanging around a bunch of sinners and people that do bad stuff, right? If that's hard for you to imagine, then he's at a restaurant that has a bar, right? Maybe that's easier for you. So he's around these people. He's telling stories. And he's telling the stories about, I call them the lost stories, the lost sheep. And he tells about the lost coin. And then he goes into the story of the lost son. And so if you have your Bibles, Luke 15, verse 11 is where we're going to be. I'd love to share this. I can't wait to share this with you, okay? So Jesus continued. There was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me the share of my estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. Everybody say wild living, every campus. And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. And when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? And I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father." And this is what happened. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And the son said to him, "Father, I've sinned against heaven, against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to him, quick. Bring the best robe. Put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, and he's alive again. He was lost, and now he's found. So they began to party. I got word for you. Your sin will never take you where the grace of God can't protect you. And I don't know what you've done, and you might be saying, you don't get it, Blake. I have gone a long ways. And I'm just telling you today, I need to hear this. Hopefully you need to hear it. Your sin will never take you where the grace of God can't protect you. Now in this story, the younger son, he would have received 1/3 of the inheritance for a Jewish community. And so the older son would receive 2/3 of the inheritance. It would all be his, and he would be over the estate and family matters. And so for this boy to say this was like saying, "Dad, I don't care about you. I don't care about your love. You're dead to me. I'm taking all my stuff that's mine, and I'm out. I'm leaving." And so this would have broken his heart, and the father would have been like, "Wait, you don't have to do this." So I'm like, "Are you sure? Because this is really going to hurt our family name. It's going to put shame on us. And for me to liquidate at my age, like, I don't know if it's going to really hurt us financially. But if that's what you think you have to do, then take these cows, take this sheep and these camels, and here's some money." And he just runs as far as he can. He feels like he's finally free. Goes to the far distant country. And what happens in the far country stays in the far country. That's funny. Anyways, so he goes as far as he can. He just starts to party. He's living it up, man. He's squandering his wealth, and he's chasing tail, and he's getting drunk, and he's with prostitutes, and he's just completely wallowing in his sin and forgets who he is. And in that moment, man, he just realized, what am I doing? And he says that he wakes up, comes to his senses. You know, maybe that's where you are today. And maybe in your life, you've just like run from God. You're a lot farther away from him than you ever thought you would. Maybe you've done things that you're really just like, I'm so ashamed of that. Maybe it's like you haven't done it yet, but you're thinking about it. You're like loving the attention of that person at work and considering throwing in, you're closer to an affair than you're even willing to admit. Maybe you love money a lot more than you love to please the heart of God. And greed is just eating you alive. Or maybe for you, it is an addiction and something's got you and just holding you down. Maybe it's porn, or maybe it is drugs or alcohol or prescription meds, and it just got you pinned down, and you're like at the end of your rope. That's exactly what it took for the prodigal. He's at the end of his rope, and it says that a severe famine came into the land. And it's like then he's just like, what am I doing? I'm eating from a pig. This is for a Jewish boy to be around pigs. It's like, no. And so this would have been like, what? He did what? But it's in that moment that he remembers. He remembers, and he starts thinking about his dad. He starts thinking about home, and he starts going, I'm going back. I'm going to go see my dad. I'm going to say to him, and he starts rehearsing in his mind what he's going to say, and he knew what his brother was going to do. He knew his brother would shame him and want to take him out back behind the shed and whip him. I know that because I'm the oldest brother, and that's what I do to my little squirts. And so he's like, I don't care. I know that I've publicly shamed my family. I've squandered the wealth. I have nothing to show for it now. To Jewish listeners, they would have been like, what? The story should have gone a different way. That's not how that story ended. And it shouldn't end that way. For them, they'd be like, that boy is said to dad, you're dead to me. And so you come back to us, you got another thing coming. Like, we ain't gonna no, you're dead to us now. And not just that, you need to be publicly shamed and publicly disciplined. The whole Jewish community, the village would have come to see him possibly stoned and killed for what he had done. I mean, they would have shamed him. That's what the people felt when they're listening to this story. But Jesus left heaven to come tell this story. And he wants us to hear, you don't understand the Father's heart. You don't understand God. You think that God wants to just make you feel awful for what you've done and beat you down. But that is not our God. Our God wants to bring you in. He wants to throw a party because you came home, and he wants to adore you. Do you see that that's what Jesus came to restore? He came to restore our identity. He was fighting what had been done in the garden by telling this story. And he's showing the listeners, like, listen, God's not what you think. And I love that the Father ran to him. I love that. You know why? Because in Eastern cultures back then and today, those dudes wear robes. So he had to hike that up, you know? When he ran, he had to take off with a sprint. And you don't do that unless you've stolen something or you're going to be killed. Like, you don't run. And so for him to do that, it's like the Father is saying, I will publicly take the shame on myself and you don't have to wear it. Don't miss that. That's what he's saying. And I will run to you. And when I get to you, I'm going to kill the baby cow. We're going to put a robe on your finger. A robe on your... That's weird. I'm telling you, I have a problem. I messed up my words. It's a real problem. And so I'm gonna put a robe on you. We're gonna put sandals on you. He dresses him. You talk about vulnerable. And when he put the ring on his finger, I need you to hear this. That's like saying to him, everything I have is yours. I know you squandered 1/3 of our estate, but here's the company card. I trust you again. Everything I have is yours. And he's saying, you forget about what you've done, because that's not who you are, son. While he was still a long way off, he runs to him, throws his arm around him, kisses him, kisses him, and kisses him. In Hebrews 12, I need you to hear this. Here's what the cross did. The cross says, for the joy set before him, meaning Jesus, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. I need you to hear this. The prodigal story and that verse tells us the importance of what Jesus did. The cross, all of the past sins of the world were stuck to Jesus in that moment in time. All of the future sins of the world, your kids' future sins, were stuck to Jesus in that point in time. And the reason why he endured the cross and scorned the shame, scorned mean that he disliked, he had no desire to take it on him. And the reason why is because in that moment, the Father turned his head from his Son because of all the shame and the repugnance of the darkness that was on our Savior. And in that moment, he endured the cross. He scorned its shame. But I need you to see this. It's one of my favorite passages in all of the Bible, and you can't miss this. It says, for the joy set before him. He looked at the path he had to take. He knew the cross, and he knew he was going to have to endure and have this shame put on him, but for joy set before him, he went to the cross, because on the other side of the cross, he knew that it was the redemption of all of us. All of his children would be saved. He would be sitting at the right hand of the Father. Eventually, it would be the final work, his atoning sacrifice, the blood that covers all of us now because of what he did on the cross. He scorned our shame, and he forever annihilated and destroyed the shame of the world. That's what Jesus did. I need you to see that he took on your shame, and he did it with joy. He wanted you to know he loves you enough to say, with joy in my heart, I will take on your sin, because he was blameless and perfect. And you might think, man, I can't go to God because of what I've done. But the cross changed everything that was done in the garden. Once Jesus endured the cross, our identity was completely restored. We were set free, and he took on himself our past. And God's perfect love abolished shame for all time. Jesus explained the heart of the Father is to never say, shame on you. That's not the heart of the Father. And so if the heart of the Father is to never say, shame on you, then we as his children, we got to stop shaming on people. No more of that. You know what we are? We are shame off people. No more shame on. We say, I don't care what you've done. Here's a robe. Let's eat. Let's feast it. I trust you, and here's your ring, and everything that the Father has is yours. That's what we should become. We no longer need to do that. We got to stop that. This has got to be talked about. We do it to our kids, teachers, coaches. We shame people. And when we do that, I need you to see, maybe you doubt God. Maybe you don't believe in Jesus. You don't believe in the cross. And I would just say to you, why wouldn't you want God to restore your identity and give you an inheritance that you don't deserve? See, when we believe shame and we take on that, our identity is shifted, and we allow the guilt of what we've done to become who we are. And we take on ourselves our own judgment and other people's judgment and condemnation. We're actually telling God and looking Jesus in the eye, and we say, we don't believe in the power of the cross. We're telling him that we don't think that what he did is enough. And we're saying to Jesus, I know that it was your greatest joy to willingly endure my sin and my guilt and my shame, but could it really be real? Is that true? And the answer is yes. Yes, it's true, and that's the gospel truth. It is true for you today. It is true for you tomorrow. Your past sins are wiped clean, and everything you're gonna sin, it's gone, it's annihilated, and all you have to do is to believe and have faith in the power of the cross, because he has a finished work that forever made you clean and pure and in good standing before God. And the only thing that can set you free, the only thing that can help you be free from your guilt and your sin, is for you to believe in the truth that Jesus saved you and he made you completely pure and whole. And you are a child of God, and he adores you. He adores you. Loves you. He loves you. Will you pray with me? Father, we're sorry for not believing you. We're sorry for not actually thinking that what you did was real and that it actually can change me and make me whole. God, would you forgive us for people here that are in this room or online or at any campus that are just going, I'm not sure. I don't think God could really make me clean. Would you just help them see that that's a lie from the enemy, that you actually died so you could completely be done with the work of sin and the work of guilt and the work of shame. You had destroyed it forever. And we thank you for the gap. We praise you, God, for the cross. Thank you for forgiving us. We're sorry for the ways that we sin. Change us, God. Make us clean. Help us no longer be the prodigal that's running from you. Instead, help us to run to you. Help us to embrace you. Father, Thank you for showing us how much you adore us. I pray we'd live for you. I pray you give us a hunger for your word and you gather around us godly people to help us grow in our faith so that we could be a bright light for you and tell other people about you and help people understand the hope of the world, that you're pure and you're clean and you're whole. You're forgiven. Jesus, thank you for leading us by your Spirit on this journey and helping us live in a way that makes your name great. Thank you for the final victory that we have in you. We praise your holy name. We love you, God. We love you. Amen.